Coming up this week, what are your ideas to improve Canada's healthcare system? Also, should there be mandatory labeling on genetically modified foods? This and much more to come. Hitting the streets, this is Outburst. Hello and welcome to Outburst. I'm Glenn McGuinness. Well, Canada's universal healthcare system has long been a source of pride in this country, but it's not without its flaws. Wait times have doubled since 1993, and many Canadians are just waiting too long to get the care they desperately need. Some have resorted to getting care south of the border. U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump has described Canada's healthcare system as catastrophic. We sent our cameras out to get your take on the matter. Our question: what are your ideas to improve Canada's healthcare system?
Somehow we need more accountability. I mean, when it's publicly funded, it's just very easy to order a lot of tests and do a lot of procedures. There just seems to be a lot of fat in the system. And we have a great system. I'm not knocking it. But, as the seniors move through, there's going to be a real crunch. So I don't know what the answer is, whether there needs to be options for paying, for kind of relieving the federal purse on some of it. I don't know how we solve that problem, but I think we're going to be in a lot of trouble on it. I mean, wait lines, I think now for a hip is probably going to be a year or more. I mean, I think mine was about 4 or 5 months 3 years ago, but I think they're much longer now.
And your thoughts? Great answer. What are your ideas to improve Canada's healthcare system?
Well, I think we're going to reach a crisis point in terms of just being able to fund it, and I think we're going to have to look at, I think as my wife indicated, some balance between private and public, like they've done in Europe, and I think it's worked there. So I think the European example is a good one where we should really examine very carefully, because we just will run out of money.
I am happy with our system. I think we're blessed with the care that we receive, especially if you compare us to the United States. I think Donald Trump was wrong saying what he said about our healthcare system in the debate. So, I work in the healthcare system, so I might be a little bit biased, but I think I work in oncology care, so I see firsthand the care that our people receive in Canada, and I think it's exceptional. So.
Yeah, I think for improving Canada's healthcare system, the most important thing is to be able to shorten the wait time for people who are waiting to get specialist treatment. Because once they get into the system, they seem to be able to function fairly efficiently, but they're very long wait times, and that's a big concern. I think that's the other thing, of course, is emergency rooms, because even though the amount of time that you have to wait for in an emergency ward has been reduced, anybody who's ever been to emergency knows it's still a really long wait. You can wait hours. So those are the two that I would think are the most important to address.
Look, I was just down there yesterday, and Americans are saying things like, why can't we have maternity leave? Why can't we have health care? And they don't seem to realize that around the world, other countries have solved those problems differently than they have. And they seem genuinely surprised when you say things like, we have a year's maternity leave in Canada. They're shocked by that. And they talk about our healthcare system, and they've never used our healthcare system. I've used both systems, and I know the differences.
It's tough, because the main issue I have, and a lot of other Canadians I believe have, is the wait times, especially if you're looking to get a big surgery or an MRI, right? You're waiting a long time. You can get lengths of months, even years waiting for these surgeries, and so that's something that could be addressed. The obvious kind of thing that a lot of people suggest is make I think it's called a two-tier health system, where you have where you can go to a private clinic and pay the extra money. However, there's also issues of that, it just kind of gives a privilege for the rich people who can afford that. So, but at the same time, I guess you could think of it as it takes people off these waiting lists, so perhaps it does shorten down wait times for the people who are underprivileged and cannot afford. So I suppose that could be something that the federal government could do to fix healthcare or help it get better, but I'm not really totally certain on that kind of answer as well.
We have to take down the bad system. We have to revamp it totally. We have to take care of our mental health a lot more, because Some wait times to get into some programs are a year and a half, and people have been on waiting lists a year just to get to another waiting list. The problem is we have too much overhead and people caring about administrative jobs and their paperwork, and a system full of people that don't care, and those that do care aren't in position where they have any power. We really have to review how we do with our health care. I still believe it should be publicly funded, but if people want to open private clinics, they can, but they don't get subsidized by the province or the federal government.
We just talked about this in one of our classes. Some of the things that I think would improve health care in Canada would be prevention, trying to prevent people from going to hospitals in the first place, particularly through obesity reduction or perhaps sugar taxes, as well as perhaps a two-tiered approach, because we've seen Canadians bring their dollars to the States to spend money on privatized healthcare. It doesn't make sense that Canadians here can't also enjoy the benefits of a two-tiered approach, particularly in regards to waiting room times.
Well, I'm actually really sick right now, so I was going to go see a doctor. My opinion is they really need to get more doctors. The wait for just to see a physician is really long, and that's what prevents me, at least, from seeing a doctor. It's just incredibly time-consuming. Like, I once had a injured head, and I was going to see a doctor in the emergency, and I waited for like 4 hours with a bleeding head. So it just didn't make sense to me.
Let us know, give us more information on how much people are being paid and things like that, because I think what's happening is we're losing really good people to the United States because the healthcare system is in dire need of good people here, and I don't know if we're using our resources as much as we should, because my mother was a nurse for 32 years and she didn't like what was going on here, so she left and went to the United States. And I have a lot of other friends that are going to the United States. So maybe more of a open book to a certain extent, I guess.
In what year did Canada legalize same-sex marriage? 2002, 2005, or 2009?
2009.
2005? Ted?
2005.
2005?
2002?
2009? 2005. 2005. 2005. 2009.
The answer, 2005.
Yay! Okay.
Can you get a little more excited next time? On July 20th, 2005, Canada legalized same-sex marriage. Genetically modified foods are defined as foods from organisms with implemented changes to their DNA through genetic modification. A recent survey by Health Canada says 61% of Canadians do not look favorably upon genetically modified foods, and a further 78% would like to see these foods clearly labeled in grocery stores. So, should this be the norm in Canada? Our question: should there be mandatory labels on genetically modified foods?
That one's a tough one. I would have to say yeah. I think that, it's good to let consumers have the awareness of that, and that's kind of really all my opinion. I mean, I don't believe genetically modified. I don't think all the food is bad, but I also don't think they're generally all good either. So I think it's just nice to give consumers that extra kind of awareness.
Not good enough. People don't tend to know what they're talking about. When you look on social media and you see people posting articles about it, they seem very underinformed. And I think that starting to just label things like yes or no, it's a GMO, is just going to lead to fear-mongering, when really we should be talking about the different aspects of that.
Yes. Anything genetically modified, you don't know the long-term effects, just because we don't have the data yet. Now, they claim they're genetically modifying our food to make it easier to farm, to be more resistant to pests, less likely to need pesticides. But sadly, we're still at the beginning ages of that technology. We won't see the impact till 20, 30 years down the line.
Well, I think we deserve the right to know what is a naturally grown product and what has been tampered with. I don't believe necessarily that genetically modified food harms us, but if on the off chance it does, I think we should have the right to know what we're putting into our bodies.
No. We've been genetically modifying foods forever. The issues with the genetically modified food industry are about monopolies and control and not enough oversight. They're not about the fact that they exist in the first place.
Yes, I believe that there should be, because then at least people who are eating need to know what they're eating, right? This exactly the same as there's organic labels. There should be like genetically modified labels.
Yes. Why? So you know what's in what you're eating. I think all products should have some sort of labeling on them. Unfortunately, there's some grandfathered in things like cosmetics, certain smoke products, cigarettes and all that, and alcohol, that they do not have to put on the label what's in them. But that should be part and parcel of all the products nowadays.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. I've never thought of that before, but I think that it would be a good idea for those people looking for alternatives, or just to be aware that it exists. I don't think not everybody knows what GMOs are, and so I guess if they have the option to maybe do further research and know what products they're buying that has that, then they can make the conscious decision to buy it or not.
I'm not sure that it's really necessary. I mean, the biggest problem with genetically modified food is ecological in the growing of it, not in the eating of it.
There's too many things going into our food. And I am a person that reads labels, and if there is a certain product that has something in it that I can't read, why am I eating it?
Yes, I agree with that as well, because then it gives people more education, and then they can decide for themselves if they want to buy that food or not. Their choice. Whereas now, if you don't know, then maybe you're not making the choice that's best for you.
Yeah, definitely. I want to know what I'm eating. I don't want to be eating some kind of mysterious manufactured food that they put out there for us to eat.
Some scientists have said that it's not a danger, but I don't think the research is in completely. So I'd like to know. I'd like to have a choice, absolutely.
And yourself, should there be mandatory labels on genetically modified foods?
Yeah, I agree. If you can believe and those labels are legitimate. I shop at my local butcher here on Bloor Street, and so I have a pretty good idea of what the meat that they sell, that it's healthy, that it comes from, good farms and that kind of thing. But in terms of produce, I'm not that picky. So, and maybe if I knew more, I would be, but I don't really know enough about it.
I read a lot about this, and I have friends who are even more informed than I am. I have a friend who's a vegan, and she's actually become a vegan because of her principles about how animals are treated and how the environment is treated. I'm not a vegetarian, but I am very concerned about what's in food, and it's just so annoying that the nutrition labels in general I don't find are helpful, whether it's about GMOs or whatever's in a product. I really can't learn in clear terms what's in the food. So if I have any qualms at all about what I'm buying, I don't buy it.
When did the beaver become an official emblem of Canada? 1965, 1975, or 1985?
75.
No idea. I'll go with 65 was a choice. Okay, I'll take 65.
1965.
1975.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with 75.
65.
I'm gonna say 75.
75.
It is 75.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that one in this good old civics class.
The beaver attained official status as an emblem of Canada on March 24th, 1975. The Energy East Pipeline, which is yet to be approved by the federal government, is a 4,500-kilometer pipeline which proposes to carry 1.1 million barrels of crude oil per day from Alberta and Saskatchewan to refineries in eastern Canada. It's seen as a big boost for an oil-driven economy, but many are concerned about the environmental risks, especially on Indigenous territory. So we took this topic to Canadians. Are you in favor of the Energy East Pipeline?
Well, it's certainly something that the government needs to look into, because those areas for Indigenous peoples are important. And there have been treaties that have been signed for many, many years, going back 100, 200, Treaty 4, 5, 6, 7, etc., that need to be respected. So that definitely needs to be looked into before any pipeline is put into their area.
I'm not afraid of any pipelines. And I know there's a lot of opposition down in Quebec and so on. So, yeah, I think we should be moving totally in a renewable direction as fast as we can.
Well, it's a difficult conundrum, because we've got the oil and we've got the refineries down east. So Alberta is hurting. So it's a question of balancing the environment and the economy, and it's a difficult situation.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about that. I understand the environmental concerns, and yet on the other hand, it is an opportunity for Canada to be able to, and for the West, to move its oil and to the east, and then to export it. It also gives us access to energy as well in central and eastern Canada. It makes us less dependent on foreign sources. So, if environmental concerns could be addressed and First Nations concerns could be addressed, then it would be a good thing overall, I think, for the country. It will still be a while before we reduce our dependence on energy, on petroleum-based energy. So, that's not going to happen right away. And in the interim, and with the export possibilities, it has a lot going for it in terms of its economic benefits.
Well, look, we need energy. But the only problem is that most of the pipelines that we have, there's always a rupture every now and again. And I think that seems to be a problem. I just find that there's just too much, I shouldn't say irresponsibility, but there's very little accountability, regarding ruptured pipelines. And also I find it a little bit sad that it takes so long for them to find when there's a pipeline that is broken, right? And of course the leaks takes too long. Like we just had one massive one, right? I forget which, I think it was Husky oil. And there was so much of this oil into the rivers, right? So we're destroying the livelihood of the Aboriginal people, and they're waiting years and years for all the things to be sorted out. So it's, I think we basically are in a real dilemma, because we don't know whether to use tanker trucks, because some of our drivers are reckless, because as we can see from the accidents on the street. So I really don't know what to say, but I'm not happy about these unsafe pipelines.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I think it's kind of a no-brainer as far as Canada. So, and realistically, it's pretty frustrating too. There's been proven that a lot of the activist groups that are kind of protesting against the Energy East pipeline have received funding from American interest groups, which is really frustrating. And frankly, in my opinion, I think that could be like one of the biggest swindlings of all time from a nation and its greatest ally. Because you don't see anybody in Texas where they're ramping up their oil production, that there's any protests or anything. And you look at like maps, it'll show you all the pipelines across the United States. And just because one's like Keystone, I know the question is about Keystone, but you think of it, Keystone, all of a sudden gets all this opposition. However, then you think Canada's Energy East, it seems like a no-brainer. We're just transporting oil across the country. Otherwise, we have to do it via rail. There's statistics indicating that perhaps rail is a more, dangerous or not as safe way to transport oil. And so I don't know, I think Energy East just makes total economic sense as far as for Canada.
Yes. Because right now, our eastern border of Canada is getting majority of their oil from the United States. If we have a pipeline heading to east, we can keep our own budget, and basically our economy will be strengthened. We will keep it within Canada. We can ship our oil to either the east coast or the west coast if BC is willing to do that. It will strengthen our economy and basically limit our dependency on the United States, which we should care more about keeping jobs within Canada than shipping down oil down south to get refined, then ship it back up. We should be building and constructing our own refineries, pipelines to ship the oil to where they need it, and will reduce costs overall.
This makes common sense. Instead of shipping oil from other countries in Africa, and it would help the industry here. We're supposed to all be Canadians sharing everything and helping each other. It's a no-brainer.
The Bank of Canada has downgraded the economic outlook for this country. Federal Finance Minister Bill Morneau says we're facing more fiscal challenges than expected. This is due to slower growth in the U.S., a rebalancing of the Chinese economy, and even fallout from the Fort McMurray fires earlier this year. So we took our final topic to you. How would you rate the Canadian economy?
Well, all things considered, right now we're sort of muddling along. I'm worried that in the not too distant future, like say within the next 3 or 4 years, we could have the onset of a recession, and it could be a very, very serious one, because actually if you do your homework on this, there are serious problems deep down within the bowels of all 4 of the major economies in the world. That is the United States, the Eurozone, China, and Japan. And Canada's economy isn't so big and so independent that we are not going to be affected. If just any one of those economic pillars goes down, I'm sure the other 3 will follow. And what chance does Canada have of, sustaining good economic performance? Right now, we're sort of, like I say, muddling along, but I worry that in the next few years we could get hit with a very severe recession.
From my perspective, it's working well. I'm retired. I have a pension. I'm not suffering. I know that it's harder for people to get jobs. I have kids who are young adults, and they're having a harder time getting jobs. I know that there are areas of the country where I think there's a huge problem with job retention and job creation. I think that in Toronto, there apparently 1 in 4 children is living under the poverty line, and that to me is shocking and shameful. So I'd have to say that at some level, the Canadian economy is not as robust as it may need to be in order to support the people who are suffering the most.
Canada is really a resource-based economy, okay? And the resources is based on this, number 1 is oil, and right now out in Alberta it's dead, okay? Because of Saudi Arabia really trying to lower the price of oil to capture a bigger part of the market, worldwide market. They have failed, but with Iran now coming in and Russia, price of oil is not going to go up that much. Okay? So that's number 1. Number 2, a lot of the resources that Canada ships to China, China's economy is also not that great. Actually, today it was announced that China's export dropped by 10%. So they're not buying a lot from Canada. Okay, so when you have a resource-based economy and people are not buying your resources or the price is too low, you're in trouble. We don't make anything anymore. The only other thing is service jobs, but they don't pay as well as manufacturing.
Probably a 6 right now. It's not really, we're not doing too crazy good as far as GDP real growth. But we're also, we were shown to be in a recession, I believe, last summer, and then we came out of a recession a bit, and then I'm not totally certain about all the kind of gross statistics, but frankly, I don't think we're doing that totally great, so just in my opinion, but just from what I've kind of seen as well, there's definitely room for improvement.
I think overall we're really good. It's funny when you're inside the system, because you know what you didn't have last week, or how prices change over time. But I think compared globally, I think we are in one of the best countries in the world. So I'm quite happy with our economy. I don't have extra income. I can't go and spend willy-nilly. Like, I'm not a rich person. But compared to most of the people in the world, we are all rich. So
I would say it's solid, but it's not growing like it was at certain points under different oil booms in this part of Canada and other booms over the history of the country. The only thing that you can really say is that should we be worried about growth in the economy, or should we be worried about trying to sustain our economy at a certain level? So I think that's the big question, is this idea of continuous growth is not attainable. Very simple.
It performed very well when it was going to hell, when the rest of the world was going to hell a couple of years ago, so it can't be that bad. We're, like, Alberta's supposed to be in a great big pit right now, but everybody's going to work. People are out spending money and stuff, and we're having it tough, so it can't be that bad.
It's doing the best it can, I think. It's going through tough times now, of course, with the oil problems, and it's not clear that efforts to increase innovation are really helping, but at least it's an attempt to do something anyway.
What is Canada's most densely populated province? Ontario, Prince Edward Island, or British Columbia?
I would say probably Prince Edward Island.
I'm from British Columbia. I don't think it's the most populated.
Ontario.
Ontario.
Ontario. British Columbia.
Ontario. PEI.
I'm going to go with PEI.
It's Prince Edward Island.
All right.
All right. Nice.
You guys are fantastic.
Thanks.
You.
Very good. With 24.97 people per square kilometre, Prince Edward Island is actually the most densely populated province in Canada. That's all for this episode of Outburst. Like what you see? Well, you can watch more episodes on our website at www.cpac.ca, on our CPAC TV To Go app, and on our YouTube channel. You can also join the conversation via social media through Instagram and Twitter at CPAC_TV. I'm Glenn McGuinness, and on behalf of all my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs Channel, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.